Welcome back to the classes on the overview of the books of the Bible. Today we learn from book of Esther. Book of Esther and book of Song of Songs are the only two books in the Bible not mentioning God. Prayer is also not mentioned, but fasting is mentioned. So it is understood that fasting and prayer go together. This is the only book in the Bible that mentions the name of our country, India. The word in Hebrew is Hodu. India appears two times in this book, Esther chapter 1 verse 1 and chapter 8 verse 9. The time of this book is around 470 BC. Now, who is the author of the book? Like many Old Testament books, Esther is an anonymous work. It is possible that the author was someone like Mordecai. This book was probably written soon after the death of King Xerxes, which happened in 464 BC. In the books of Ezra and Nehemiah, we saw that some people went back from exile into the promised land, but many stayed back in Persia. So the book of Esther gives us a glimpse into the lives of those Jews who stayed back in Persia. I am amazed to see how God continued to protect and provide for those who refused to go back to the promised land after God worked out everything needed for them to go back home. A general reading of the book of Esther may lead us to consider Esther and Mordecai as heroes of this book. But the proper study will help us to understand that the true hero in this book, as well as in every book in the Bible, is truly God Himself. A basic outline of the book is like this: Esther and Mordecai in Persia, chapter 1 and 2. The threat to all Jews, chapters 3 to 5. The deliverance of the Jews, chapters 6 to 9. Mordecai exalted and peace in exile, chapter 10. Let us read Esther chapter 1, 1 to 4. This is what happened during the time of Xerxes. The Xerxes who ruled over 127 provinces stretching from India to Kush. At this time, King Xerxes reigned from his royal throne in the citadel of Susa, and in the third year of his reign he gave a banquet for all his nobles and officials, the military leaders of Persia and Media. The princes, the nobles of the provinces were present. For a full 180 days he displayed the vast wealth of his kingdom and the splendor and glory of his majesty. The whole story of Esther takes place when King Xerxes, who was also known as Ahasuerus, was ruling in the Persian Empire. He is believed to have ruled during 485 to 465 BC. The initial plot of the story is from the big banquet he gave in the third year of his reign. It is the most lavish banquet mentioned in the whole Bible. It lasted 180 days. During the last phase of his banquet, he ordered his wife, Queen Vashti, to present herself to the guests. But she refused to come. This enraged the king, and most probably in the drunken state, he called for his advisors to meet to decide what to do with Queen. Finally, the chief advisor concluded their discussion like this: Esther chapter 1, 19 to 20. Therefore, if it pleases the king, let him issue a royal decree, and let it be written in the laws of Persia and Media, which cannot be repealed, that Vashti is never again to enter the presence of the king Xerxes. Also let the king give her royal position to someone else who is better than she. Then the king's edict is proclaimed throughout all his vast realm. All the women will respect their husbands from the least to the greatest. From this book we see that the Persian kings had a tradition of issuing decrees and translating them into the languages of all the provinces and setting them to all parts of their empire. Also, the decree that the king issues cannot be repealed or modified. The law is the law forever. No amendment to the law. Soon after this, king felt remorse for removing his queen. So the advisors again gave another idea to find a new wife for the king. The plan was to bring the most beautiful young women from all the provinces and give them beauty treatment for a long time, and finally present each one to the king, and he chooses one from them. Esther chapter 2 verse 4 reads, "Then let the young woman who pleases the king be queen instead of Vashti." This advice appealed to the king and he followed it. Now is the appearance of Esther and Mordecai, the main characters in this book. Esther chapter 2 verses 5 to 8 we read, Now there was in the citadel of Judah a Jew of the tribe of Benjamin named Mordecai son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, who had been carried into exile from Jerusalem by Nebuchadnezzar king of Babylon, among those taken captive with Jehoiachin the king of Judah. Mordecai had a cousin named Hadassah, whom he had brought up because she had neither father nor mother. This young woman, who was also known as Esther, had a lovely figure and was beautiful. Mordecai had taken her as his own daughter when her father and mother died. When the king's order and the edict had been proclaimed, many young women were brought to the citadel of Susa and put under the care of Hegai. Esther also was taken to the king's palace and entrusted to Hegai, who had charge of harem. Tell me from verse 5, who was taken into exile along with King Jeconiah? That is another version of the name Jehoiachin. It was Kish, not Mordecai. Kish was the great-grandfather of Mordecai, who was taken into exile along with Jehoiachin in 597 BC. This is very important to understand, otherwise you will have a lot of confusion about the dates. So Mordecai was born by around 500 BC. Mordecai was probably between 30 to 50 years of age when he appears in the book of Esther. He is mentioned as a compassionate and loving person who raised Esther, who was an orphan, as his own daughter. Esther was Mordecai's cousin. Esther is the Persian name given to her when her original Hebrew name was Hadassah. Hadassah means myrtle tree. These trees had flowers that looked like stars. Her Persian name, Esther, means star. In the Jewish history, she is truly a star. Let's read Esther chapter 2, 10 and 11. Esther had not revealed her nationality and family background because Mordecai had forbidden her to do so. Every day he walked back and forth near the courtyard of the harem to find out how Esther was and what was happening to her. This is important to notice. We don't know why Mordecai told her not to reveal her nationality. Persian kings don't seem to have shown any hatred towards Jews. But God used this for a greater purpose as we see the story being unfolded. Esther chapter 3 verse 1 to 2 says, After these events, King Xerxes honored Haman the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, elevating him to a position above all the princes who were with him. All the royal servants at the king's gate bowed down and paid homage to Haman, because the king had commanded that this be done for him. But Mordecai would not bow down or pay homage. Haman is elevated to second highest position in the empire. All royal servants at the king's gate bowed down to him, but Mordecai was different. He would not bow down to Haman. This made Haman very angry with Mordecai. So who was Mordecai? We see him always at the king's gate. I used to wonder, why is that? In ancient times, important people of the city met at the city gate. In Israel, it was the meeting place of the elders. Here it looks like Mordecai was also a royal servant or official at the king's gate. Verse 3 and 4 says, Then the royal servants at the king's gate asked Mordecai, Why do you disobey the commands of the king? Verse 4, Day after day they warned him, but he would not comply, so they reported it to Haman to see whether Mordecai's behavior would be tolerated, since he had told them that he was a Jew. Who was warning Mordecai? King's officials. So most probably he was one of them. Now Haman comes to know that Mordecai is a Jew. So he thought of destroying not only Mordecai, but also all the Jews in the entire Persian Empire. He cast the lot or threw the dice to decide a date for the annihilation of all the Jews. He makes the king issue a decree for his entire empire to destroy all Jews on that particular day. Esther 3 verse 13 we read, Dispatches were sent by couriers to all the king's provinces with the order to destroy, kill and annihilate all the Jews. young and old, women and children, on a single day, the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar, and to plunder their goods. See how Mordecai responded to this. Esther chapter 4, 1 to 3. When Mordecai learned of all that had been done, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, and went out into the city, wailing loudly and bitterly. But he went only as far as the king's gate, because no one clothed in sackcloth was allowed to enter it. In every province to which the edict and order of the king came, there was great mourning among the Jews, with fasting and weeping and wailing. Many lay in sackcloth and ashes. Esther came to know that Mordecai was going around in sackcloths. So she sent him clothes, but he refused to wear them. So she sent her official to inquire. Esther chapter 4, 6 to 8 we read. So Hathach went out to Mordecai in the open square of the city in front of the king's gate. Mordecai told him everything that had happened to him, including the exact amount of money Haman had promised to pay into the royal treasury for the destruction of the Jews. He also gave him a copy of the text of the edict for their annihilation, which had been published in Susa, to show to Esther and explain it to her. And he told him to instruct her to go into the king's presence to beg for mercy and plead with him for her people. But there was a problem. Persian kings used to live in seclusion, probably because of fear of assassination. No one was allowed to enter the king's presence without being summoned, or else they would lose their lives. That included his wife, the queen. So she sent word to Mordecai that it was 30 days before this she got a chance to see the king. Here is an important response from Mordecai. Read Esther chapter 4, verse 12 to 14. When Esther's words were reported to Mordecai, he sent back this answer. Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place. But you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. Mordecai was not pleased with the excuse of Esther. He challenges her that just because she was in the palace of the king, she will escape. One very important statement of faith he makes here. Though he is not talking specifically about God, it is implied here. Verse 14. If you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place. But you and your father's family will perish. He seemed to be a Jew with trust in God's deliverance. He believed that even if Esther didn't use her power as the queen, the deliverance of the Jews would come from somewhere else because they were people belonging to God. Here is another key statement. And who knows but that you have come to this royal position for such a time as this. Such a time as this is a widely used phrase even by the secular people. Mordecai intended to help Esther to be able to get the point. Understand the situation is so serious and she must play a key role in saving the Jewish race from extinction. He's telling her that you have to consider that God has put you in this position as queen in such a time as this. Such a time of crisis, to do something to save the people. See Esther's response. Esther 4, 15 to 17. Then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai. Go, gather together all the Jews who are in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night and day, and I and my attendants will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish. So Mordecai went away and carried out all of Esther's instructions. Though the word prayer doesn't appear here, Esther is asking Mordecai to inspire all the Jews in Susa to fast and cry out to God so that she will be welcomed by the king when she goes to him without being summoned. It doesn't matter if she is the queen. If she appears before him without being summoned, the king can give even order to put her to death. So, she is putting her life at risk by going to him to request help. But she is hoping that God will hear their prayers and spare her from death. At the same time, she is telling that even if she has to die, she is ready. That is where she makes this key statement: if I perish, I perish. After 3 days of fasting, she approaches the king. We read in Esther chapter 5 verse 1 to 2. On the third day, Esther put on the royal robes and stood in the inner court of the palace in front of the king's hall. The king was sitting on his royal throne in the hall, facing the entrance. When he saw Queen Esther standing in the court, he was pleased with her and held out to her the gold scepter that was in his hand. So Esther approached and touched the tip of the scepter. Imagine the fear she had when she approached the king. She can die. She can die or live and save her people. Anything can happen. But God worked so powerfully and moved the king to have the right mood to extend his scepter to her. That was a sign that she was safe and welcomed to his presence. Now she can tell her request to him. But Esther was wise and she didn't tell the real problem, but requested the king and Haman to come for a banquet she was going to prepare. King agreed to it. On the first day of the banquet, she did not inform the king of her request, but requested them to come for another banquet the next day. We wonder why. But as we read the story further, we can see God was behind all these events. After the banquet, Haman went out of the palace with great excitement. But again he met Mordecai, who was not willing to bow down to him. This made him to be sad and angry. So his wife gives another advice. Esther 5 verse 14. His wife Zeresh and all his friends said to him, have a pole set up reaching to a height of 50 cubits and ask the king in the morning to have Mordecai impaled on it. Then go with the king to the banquet and enjoy yourself. This suggestion delighted Haman, and he had the pole set up. Impaling was a cruel way of capital punishment for the Persians. What is impaling? Install a long vertical wooden pole with a pointed edge on top, and the person's body is pierced by the pointed edge, and the body hangs on it until he dies. He set up a 75-foot long pole for that purpose. Haman goes to meet the king to get his approval for impaling Mordecai. But then he had no idea what God of Mordecai had done. Esther 6, 1-6. That night the king could not sleep, so he ordered the book of the Chronicles, the record of his reign, to be brought in and read to him. It was found recorded there that Mordecai had exposed Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's officers who guarded the doorway, who had conspired to assassinate King Xerxes. What honor and recognition has Mordecai received for this? The king asked. Nothing has been done for him, his attendants answered. Then the king said, who is at the court? Now Haman had just entered the outer court of the palace to speak to the king about impaling Mordecai on the pole he had set up for him. His attendants answered, Haman is standing in the court. Bring him in, the king ordered. When Haman entered, the king asked him, what should be done for the man the king delights to honor? Do you notice how God worked so powerfully? God did not allow the king to sleep. So the king asked his attendants to read from the chronicles of his reign. There he heard the story of how Mordecai had saved his life by reporting the plot of assassination by king's other officials. King immediately asked, how was Mordecai rewarded for such a great service? He found out nothing was done. Then king wondered, what is the best way to reward Mordecai? That is the time Haman comes in to request the king's approval to impale the same Mordecai. Before Haman could place his request, the king asked him how to reward someone. The king took delight. Haman thought that the king was thinking of rewarding him, so he gave him the best idea. Verses 7-9. For the man the king delights to honor, have them bring a royal robe the king had worn, and the horse king has ridden, one with a royal crest placed on its head. Then let the robe and the horse be entrusted to one of the king's most noble princes, Let them rob the man the king delights to honor and lead him on the horse through the city streets, proclaiming before him, this is what is done for the man the king delights to honor. King was pleased with this idea and asked Haman himself to do the same, for none other than his archenemy Mordecai. Imagine how Haman felt. He had to honor the one that he despised and was planning to kill that day. Do you see what God can do? Esther chapter 6 verse 12 to 14. Afterwards Mordecai returned to the king's gate, but Haman rushed home with his head covered in grief and told Zeresh, his wife, and all his friends everything that had happened to him. His advisers and his wife Zeresh said to him, since Mordecai before whom your downfall has started is of Jewish origin, you cannot stand against him. You will surely come to ruin. While they were still talking with him, the king's eunuchs arrived and hurried Haman away to the banquet Esther had prepared. Haman is seeing how things have turned against him. As he reported these things to his advisers and his wife, what did they say? Since Mordecai, before whom your downfall has started, is of Jewish origin, you cannot stand against him. You will surely come to ruin. Why does she do that? What does she know about Jews? Now it is important to notice one thing. What is the villain's name? Haman the Agagite. Who are the Agagites? Do you remember who is Agag in the Bible? Remember the story where God sends King Saul with a mission to destroy all the Amalekites. But King Saul disobeyed God and did not destroy everything. He even brought the king of the Amalekites, and his name was Agag. He brought him to Israel, and Samuel had to put him to death. God rejected King Saul because of that disobedience. But now, do you see the consequences of that disobedience? Generations and centuries later, the existence of the entire Jewish race is threatened because of Haman the Agagite, whose ancestors were spared by King Saul. See how important is obedience to God. Even if it doesn't sound logical to us, we must obey God's word because He is filled with wisdom that no one can imagine. It is interesting to notice another thing. King Saul was from the tribe of Benjamin. Mordecai and Esther were also from the same tribe. King Saul disobeyed God and lost his throne and life, but Mordecai and Esther trusted and obeyed God and were elevated to great positions as heroes to be remembered. One more thing to consider regarding all that has happened here. It was not even Haman who was the real villain. It was Satan. More than anyone, Satan knew the prophecies about the coming of Messiah. He was to be born of the family line of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Judah, and David. If Messiah is born, he will save the world from the clutches of Satan. Satan will fail and God will win. So what is Satan doing? He wanted to erase the Jewish race so that Messiah would not come. Then victory is assured for Satan. That is why Satan was using Haman and Xerxes to do all this. But we know and see here that no one, including Satan, can ever thwart the plans of God. God is defeating the devil here through Mordecai and Esther. The winner is not Mordecai or Esther, but God himself. Esther 7, 1 to 10. So the king and Haman went to Queen Esther's banquet. And as they were drinking wine on the second day, the king again asked Queen Esther, "What is your petition? It will be given to you. What is your request? Even up to the half the kingdom, it will be granted." Then Queen Esther answered, "If I found favor with you, your majesty, and if it pleases you, grant me my life, this is my petition, and spare my people, this is my request. For I and my people have been sold to be destroyed, killed, and annihilated. If we had merely been sold as male and female slaves, I would have kept quiet, because no such distress would justify disturbing the king." King Xerxes asked Queen Esther, "Who is he? Where is he? The man who has dared to do such a thing?" Esther said, "An adversary and the enemy, this vile Haman. Then Haman was terrified before the king and queen. The king got up in a rage, left the wine, and went out into the palace garden. But Haman, realizing that the king had already decided his fate, stayed behind to beg Queen Esther for his life. Just as the king returned from the palace garden to the banquet hall, Haman was falling on the couch where Esther was reclining. The king exclaimed, "Will he even molest the queen while she is with me in the house?" As soon as the word left the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. Then Harbona, one of the eunuchs attending the king, said, "A pole is reaching to a height of 50 cubits, stands by Haman's house. He had it set up for Mordecai, who spoke up to help the king." The king said, "Impale him on it." So they impaled Haman on the pole he had set up for Mordecai. Then the king's fury subsided. That was the end of Haman and his plot against Jews based on his ego. God orchestrated a great victory to save his people. In chapter 9, we see king appointing Mordecai to be in the position of Haman. Esther chapter 9 verse 2. The king took off his signet ring, which he had reclaimed from Haman, and presented it to Mordecai. And Esther appointed him over Haman's estate. But the decree from the king to kill all Jews was still there in effect. Persian laws could not be repealed. So the king entrusted Mordecai to issue another decree as he and Esther felt right. So Mordecai drafted another decree allowing all Jews in the Persian Empire to defend themselves and kill their enemies before the day set by Haman to kill the Jews. This was done so that there would be none of the enemies of Jews would remain to attack them. Esther 8:15-17 reads, Mordecai went out from the presence of the king in royal garments of blue and white, with a large gold crown and a purple robe of fine linen. And the city of Susa shouted and rejoiced. For the Jews, it was a time of light and gladness, for joy and honor. In every province and every city, wherever the king's edict and decree reached, there was joy and gladness among the Jews, with feasting and celebrating. And many of the people of the land themselves became Jews, because the fear of the Jews had fallen upon them. This led to celebration of the festival called Purim. Esther chapter 9:20-22 reads, Mordecai recorded these events and sent letters to all the Jews in all the provinces of King Xerxes, both near and far, to establish among them an annual celebration on the 14th and 15th days of the month of Adar, as the days on which the Jews gained rest from their enemies, and the month in which their sorrows turned to joy, and a mourning into a holiday. He wrote that these were to be days of feasting and joy, of sending gifts to one another and to the poor. Reading of the book of Esther became a part of the celebration of the festival Purim. Iconic reversal of these events. These are I learned from Bible Project. The story starts with the king's splendor and greatness, ends with Mordecai's splendor and greatness. Next, dethroning Queen Vashti. Reversal is the coronation of Esther as queen. Haman's edict to destroy Jews and feasting. Mordecai's edict to destroy enemies of Jews and feasting. The downfall of Haman to elevation of Mordecai. The turning point of major events is dependence on God for salvation through fasting. What is the message of Esther? God will powerfully deal with all those who oppose his people and kingdom, and save his people from even the most powerful forces of this world. What should be our response to knowing this? Be at peace even when we face the biggest threats. Know that God is in control and he will send deliverance at his time and in his way. The greatest victory is already won by Jesus. He has already defeated the devil. He has done it through his resurrection. So let us trust in Jesus and lead a life of peace and joy, knowing that no matter what comes against us, God is in control and he will fight for us. We are safe in his hands. To God be the glory. Thank you.